In this video, we're going to talk about one of OpenAI's most important new models, GPT-5.6. And honestly, this doesn't look like another update that just gives us slightly better answers, writes cleaner text, or scores a few points higher on AI benchmarks. This time, OpenAI seems to be pushing AI towards something much bigger, something that can actually take a real task and handle it from beginning to end. It can do research, read files, write code, use tools, browse websites, work with software, check its own results, and even use multiple AI agents at the same time to solve complex problems. But how different is GPT 5.6 really? What are the technical specs? Is it actually much better than GPT 5.5? And most importantly, what difference will regular users actually notice? Let's start from the beginning. The first thing you need to know is that GPT 5.6 isn't just one model. When we say GPT 5.6, we're actually talking about a family of 3 different models. The first one is called Sol. Sol is the flagship and most powerful member of the family. It's designed for difficult tasks like professional software development, research, scientific analysis, design, computer use, and long multi-step projects. The second model is called Terra. Terra is supposed to give you a balance between performance and cost, so you still get many of the new capabilities, but at a lower price. And the third model is Luna. Luna is the fastest and most affordable model in the family. It's mainly designed for services that need to process a huge number of requests while keeping costs low. You can think of these 3 models as 3 different classes of cars. Sol is the premium, fully loaded flagship. Terra still gives you strong performance, but it's more affordable. And Luna is optimized for speed, high volume, and lower costs. What's interesting is that OpenAI says Sol, Terra, and Luna may not be temporary names just for this release. They could become permanent product tiers in the OpenAI ecosystem, and each one may improve at a different pace in the future. So when was GPT 5.6 released? The rollout of GPT 5.6 Sol inside ChatGPT started on July 9, 2026. But the rollout is happening gradually, so some users may not see the model in their ChatGPT model picker yet. There's also something important to understand. GPT 5.6 has not replaced GPT 5.5 Instant. GPT 5.5 Instant is still the fast default model for normal everyday questions. When you choose medium, high, or extra high inside ChatGPT, you're basically using GPT 5.6 Sol with different amounts of reasoning power and compute. The Pro mode uses the more powerful GPT 5.6 Sol Pro model. So OpenAI is basically saying, for simple questions, we don't need to turn on the most powerful model every single time. But when the problem gets difficult, ChatGPT can switch to GPT 5.6 and spend more time thinking. Now, let's talk about the technical specs. One of the biggest upgrades in GPT 5.6 is the context window. You can think of the context window as the model's working memory. All 3 models, Sol, Terra, and Luna, support a context window of 1,050,000 tokens. That means you can put more than 1 million tokens of information into a single request. Now, 1 million tokens doesn't mean exactly 1 million words. The number of words depends on the language and the type of content. But just to give you an idea, we're talking about enough information for several large books, thousands of pages of documents, or a huge part of a software project. This can be extremely useful. For example, you could ask the model to inspect a massive code base, analyze hundreds of reports, review long contracts, or find connections between information spread across many different files. But having a huge context window isn't enough by itself. Some AI models can accept a lot of information, but when the input gets really long, they start forgetting important details, especially information buried somewhere in the middle. According to OpenAI's long context memory tests, Seoul scored around 91.5% in the range of roughly 256,000 to 512,000 tokens. And between 512,000 and 1 million tokens, the score was around 73.8%. So the model has definitely improved at handling extremely long inputs. But we still shouldn't assume that it remembers every single detail perfectly when we give it 1 million tokens. GPT-5.6 can also generate much longer answers. The model supports outputs of up to 128,000 tokens. Of course, that doesn't mean it's going to write an entire book every time you ask a question, but this larger output capacity can be very useful for complex projects. Imagine giving the model a full software project and saying, analyze the whole project, find the problems, suggest a better architecture, rewrite the parts that need improvement, create automated tests, and then write the documentation. With a larger output limit, the model has more room to handle all of those steps in one long workflow. Now, how up-to-date is GPT 5.6? The official training knowledge cutoff for the GPT 5.6 models is February 16, 2026. But that doesn't mean the model can't find newer information. GPT 5.6 supports web search, so when it has access to the search tool, it can go online and look for more recent information. Now, let's talk about multimodal capabilities. GPT 5.6 can accept both text and images as input. That means you can upload a screenshot, a chart, a user interface design, or a photo and ask questions about it. However, based on the current API specifications, the model itself produces text output. Direct audio and video input are also not supported by the GPT 5.6 models themselves in the API. GPT 5.6 can still use an image generation tool, but that's different from the model directly generating images. The model understands your request, decides what should be created, and then calls a separate image generation tool to make the image. Now, in my opinion, one of the biggest upgrades in GPT 5.6 is something you might not immediately notice during a normal chat. This generation was designed to work with tools. Inside the API, GPT 5.6 can use web search, file search, code execution, a shell environment, computer control tools, image generation, MCP servers, and many other tools. But why does that matter? Imagine telling the AI, find this company's financial reports, collect the data for the last 5 years, put the information into a table. Create some charts, analyze the company's risks, and finally, prepare a professional report that I can actually present. Older models might handle each step separately. They would call one tool, receive a large result, send everything back into the model, read it, and then call the next tool. GPT 5.6 introduces a capability called programmatic tool calling. With this system, the model can write and run lightweight code to coordinate different tools. It can remove unnecessary information, keep only the useful results, and decide what to do next based on the output of each step. So instead of doing this, use this tool, then waiting, then reading the result, then calling another tool, the model can design and manage an entire workflow. This can reduce unnecessary back and forth, lower token usage, and make complicated tasks more efficient. Now let's talk about max mode. GPT 5.6 introduces a new reasoning level called max. Previous models already had different reasoning levels, but max gives the model even more thinking time and more computing power than the extra high mode. In max mode, the model has more time to explore different solutions, test its results, find its own mistakes, and improve its approach. Of course, answers in max mode may take longer and cost more. So if your question is, what is the capital of France? Using max mode would make absolutely no sense. But for designing the architecture of a large system, finding a difficult software bug, or doing a complex multi-step research project, max mode could be useful. Now we get to one of the most interesting features, Ultra mode. Ultra mode is basically what happens when one AI starts working more like a team. Normally, one model works on your problem, but in Ultra mode, multiple AI agents can work on different parts of the problem at the same time. According to OpenAI, GPT-5.6 uses 4 parallel agents by default. Let's say you want to evaluate a new startup. One agent could analyze the market, another agent could study the competitors, a third agent could analyze the business model and revenue, and the fourth agent could focus on technical risks. Then the results from all 4 agents could be combined into one final answer. It's almost like having a small research team instead of hiring just one researcher. Of course, using multiple agents doesn't automatically mean the answer will always be better. More agents usually means more token usage and possibly higher costs. But for complicated projects, dividing the work between multiple agents could improve the quality and reduce the total time needed to reach a result. Now, let's talk about programming. OpenAI says GPT-5.6 Sol is the company's strongest coding model so far. But this doesn't just mean it can write a better Python function. The main focus is Agentic coding. That means the model can enter a real software project, inspect the files, understand the architecture, modify the code, run terminal commands, execute tests, read error messages, fix the code again, and continue this process until it reaches the desired result.
In the Terminal Bench 2.1 benchmark, GPT-5.6 Sol scored 88.8%. The Ultra version reached 91.9%. Of course, we should always be careful when looking at benchmarks. A high benchmark score doesn't mean the model will never create bugs in a real project. But these results show that GPT 5.6 is focused less on generating a few lines of code and more on completing long, multi-step software tasks. Another area OpenAI has focused on is website and user interface design. Older models could already generate HTML, CSS, and React code, but many of the results looked pretty average. Spacing was sometimes wrong. For example, if you give it an existing presentation, it may be able to recognize the title fonts, the spacing between elements, the colors, and the overall slide structure. Then it can continue using that same design system in new slides. GPT 5.6 has also improved at creating documents and Excel files. According to OpenAI, it can follow complicated templates more accurately and work better with financial models, formulas, and page layouts. And honestly, I think this is a really important part of the future of AI. The future isn't just about displaying the answer to a question inside a chat window. The future is about delivering something you can actually use: a report, an Excel spreadsheet, a presentation, a website, or maybe even a complete software application. GPT 5.6 has also improved at using web browsers and computer environments. In BrowseComp, a benchmark that measures multi-step web research, GPT 5.6 Sol scored 90.4%. Ultra mode reached 92.2%. In OS World 2.0, which tests an AI model's ability to perform tasks inside a computer environment, Sol scored 62.6%. So we're still far away from having a perfect human-level computer user, but AI models are slowly moving beyond the stage where they only explain how software works. Now they can actually enter an environment and perform tasks themselves. GPT 5.6 hasn't only improved in programming and design. OpenAI says the model has also improved in scientific research, biology, chemistry, and long-form analysis. GPT 5.6 has also been introduced as OpenAI's strongest cybersecurity model so far.
Layouts could be messy, the mobile version was often incomplete, and a lot of websites had that same repetitive AI-generated look. OpenAI says GPT 5.6 has a better understanding of design. It can take a general description and create interfaces that are more useful, more polished, and more visually appealing. But the more important improvement is that the model can inspect the rendered result. So instead of just generating code, it can actually look at the page, find visual or functional problems, and improve the design. This could be a major upgrade for vibe coding tools. The AI is slowly moving from being just a code generator to something closer to a designer, developer, and tester working together. Another major focus of GPT 5.6 is creating real, usable files, not just explaining how to make a PowerPoint presentation. The model can create an editable presentation itself. It can organize the content, build the layout, generate charts, choose suitable typography, and even understand the visual style of an example file. For example, if you give it an existing presentation, it may be able to recognize the title fonts, the spacing between elements, the colors, and the overall slide structure. Then it can continue using that same design system in new slides. GPT 5.6 has also improved at creating documents and Excel files. According to OpenAI, it can follow complicated templates more accurately and work better with financial models, formulas, and page layouts. And honestly, I think this is a really important part of the future of AI. The future isn't just about displaying the answer to a question inside a chat window. The future is about delivering something you can actually use: a report, an Excel spreadsheet, a presentation, a website, or maybe even a complete software application. GPT 5.6 has also improved at using web browsers and computer environments. In BrowseComp, a benchmark that measures multi-step web research, GPT 5.6 Sol scored 90.4%. Ultra mode reached 92.2%. In OS World 2.0, which tests an AI model's ability to perform tasks inside a computer environment, Sol scored 62.6%. So we're still far away from having a perfect human-level computer user, but AI models are slowly moving beyond the stage where they only explain how software works. Now they can actually enter an environment and perform tasks themselves. GPT 5.6 hasn't only improved in programming and design. OpenAI says the model has also improved in scientific research, biology, chemistry, and long-form analysis. GPT 5.6 has also been introduced as OpenAI's strongest cybersecurity model so far. It can help review code security, find vulnerabilities, analyze threats, and suggest fixes. But obviously, these capabilities can also create risks. A tool that helps a security expert discover vulnerabilities could potentially be misused by an attacker. Because of that, OpenAI has added more restrictions and safety systems for this generation. According to OpenAI's safety report, the GPT 5.6 Sol models were classified as having high capability in cybersecurity and biological risk areas. However, they did not reach the critical level. OpenAI says it performed a huge amount of safety testing before the public release. The company says it used around 700,000 hours of A100 GPU equivalent computing power for automated testing and vulnerability discovery. And the safety system doesn't rely on one simple filter. There are multiple layers. Some safety protections are trained directly into the model. Requests are checked while the model is running. There is continuous monitoring, and there are also account-level controls. Of course, stronger safety systems can sometimes block legitimate cybersecurity requests as well. OpenAI says the cybersecurity protections in GPT 5.6 Sol block around 10 times more potentially dangerous activity than previous models. But GPT 5.6 is still not perfect, and I think this is really important to say. We shouldn't create a magical image of this model. GPT 5.6 is still an AI AI model. It can generate incorrect information, it can misunderstand what the user wants, it can write code that looks completely correct but fails in certain situations. OpenAI's safety report also mentions that in some agentic coding evaluations, GPT-5.6 showed a slightly higher tendency than GPT-5.55 to go beyond the user's requested scope. The overall rate was still reported as low, but this is very important when we're talking about AI agents. When an AI only generates text, a wrong answer may just confuse you, but when the AI has permission to run commands, modify files, or control software, access levels and user approval become much more important. Now let's talk about API pricing. GPT 5.6 Sol costs $5 for every 1 million input tokens. Output costs $30 for every 1 million tokens. For Terra, the price is $2.50 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. So Sol is designed for the most complex tasks. Terra gives you a balance between performance and cost, and Luna is designed for high-volume projects where keeping costs low is extremely important. There is also one more pricing detail. When a request contains more than 272,000 input tokens, the total input cost is doubled and the output cost is multiplied by 1.5. So having a 1 million token context window doesn't mean using the entire context window will always be cheap. Now, who can access GPT 5.6? Inside the normal ChatGPT experience, Plus users have access to medium and high modes. Business, Pro, and Enterprise users can access additional levels, including Extra High. Some plans also include the Pro model. Free and Go users currently don't have access to GPT 5.6 Sol in the standard ChatGPT experience. Terra and Luna also can't be selected directly in normal ChatGPT conversations.
But depending on your plan, they may be available through Codex, ChatGPT Work, or the API. So after all of this, how important is GPT 5.6? In my opinion, the biggest change isn't just that the model is smarter. The direction of the technology is more important. Older generations felt more like chatbots. You asked a question, you received an answer. But GPT 5.6 is moving closer to becoming a digital worker, a system that can research, plan, use tools, write code, create files, work with computers, review its own results, and coordinate multiple AI agents for larger projects. But we still shouldn't say that we have reached artificial general intelligence. The model still makes mistakes. It still needs human supervision. And many of these claims still need to be tested in real-world use. Good benchmark scores are important, but the real test of GPT 5.6 will be what people actually build with it over the next few months. Can it really complete a large software project with much less human involvement? Can it create files that are ready to use without hours of editing? Will AI agents become more reliable? And will multi-agent systems really improve the quality of the final result? These are questions we'll probably get answers to very soon. But one thing already seems clear. The AI competition is no longer just about answering questions. The new competition is about getting real work done. And GPT 5.6 may be one of OpenAI's biggest steps toward that future. Now I want to know what you think. Do you think multi-agent AI will actually be useful, or will it just use more tokens and make everything more expensive? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy videos about artificial intelligence and technology, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.